House has considered electrical vehicle charging infrastructure. Minister.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Mr. Pritchard. It's a delight to see you, not least as a man educated in Hereford, in the chair. And what a pleasure it is for me to respond to my dear friend, the member for Wimbledon, for his very interesting comments. And I congratulate him on the indefatigable way in which he has pressed this issue within this chamber and within this House of Commons over the years on behalf of his constituents in Wimbledon. He's absolutely right. It's very important and it has wider repercussions. And I thank other colleagues who have made interventions in this debate. What is interesting, of course, is that this isn't just following the debate that my honourable friend mentions in some few weeks ago. It also follows a debate we had this morning on rural decarbonisation for 90 minutes with my friend, the honourable member for North Devon. And that testifies itself to the level of concern and interest that there is within amongst our colleagues and within this House. Now, as he will know, government is absolutely committed to achieving its climate change obligations, and decarbonising transport is a key part of that. And I hope fairly shortly we will have some quite important announcements to make in relation to the zero-emission vehicles mandate, which will itself be a massive driver of investment in new charge points and in new electric vehicles. And, of course, we do that because we all know that it will help improve, not only decarbonise the atmosphere, but also improve air quality and the quality of life in our towns and cities, and supporting a sustainable pattern of economic growth. We are committed to phasing out the sale of all new petrol and diesel cars and vans by 2030, and to ensuring that all vehicles are, all these petrol and diesel cars and vans are zero emission by 2035. And we've put in something like £2 billion already to support that process of transition. Now, as part of that, almost a year ago, the government published what I think is a bit of a landmark and a very comprehensive document, the Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Strategy, and that set out the government's vision and commitments in this area. And in particular, it did put in place an expectation of around 100,000 public charge points, not just charge points, the Honourable Member said charge points, public charge points. And that's important because, of course, sitting alongside that are hundreds of thousands of charge points being put in to private premises by, as it were, the normal processes of investment going alongside the purchase of electric vehicles. That may be under a previously funded scheme. It may come as part of the package of buying the vehicle or via a number of other methods. So that is, even that 300,000 is just a part of the overall picture. That is an ambitious target. He's right to flag the ambition inherent in it, and we do not resile from that. And as technology changes and the market becomes more competitive and the zero-emission vehicle mandate kicks in, we expect that target to come into view. Be delighted to.
Hello. Thank the Minister for giving way. He will know that the use of technology throughout history is accelerated when there is greater interoperability, more common standards and open protocols. Does he feel that that's actually an important aspect of our race to increase the deployment of electric vehicle charging infrastructure in this country?
Yes, I don't think there's any doubt about that. He's right that that has been the pattern in the past. Of course, one can't just regard technology as a panacea. I mean, technology will improve and will stimulate competition and increase growth at certain rates, but one has to be careful to what that rate is. Certainly, there is a moment in all market development where markets go from being a collection of competing standards and potential franchises to becoming a standardized overall, all-embracing place in which different rivals can compete. And that's what we're seeing with charging. We're seeing individual networks clearly yielding over time to networks which can be accessed using credit cards, for example, in a network-neutral way. And we are supporting that from within the department. So I think he's right about that. Just to pick up some of the points of the overall strategy, it's worth pointing out that local authorities, as my friend, the member for Wimbledon, has highlighted, are going to be and will remain central a central part of the nearer to home provision of charging. And indeed possibly the nearer to business. The bit that will be less in there is the rapid charging on the public strategic road network, because that will end up, that has different demands and is likely to be handled slightly different, is being handled a slightly different way, by and large. But broadly speaking, so on the 21st of February, as he may know, the government announced an additional £56 million in public and industry funding in order to support this so-called Levi programme, including a capability pilot designed to improve the capacity of local authorities to commission and implement this infrastructure, recognising the concern that that was not necessarily a completely consistent picture of expertise or capability on the local authority network. And that capability then in turn enables, I think, the question that he rightly presses the government on, which is whether we will continue to incentivise, encourage and press local authorities to do more. And of course, we can do that as their capabilities improve. Yes, of course.
Stephen.
I mean, my right honourable friend is clearly right in terms of what the government should be pressing local authorities to do, but given they are giving this additional fund for the capacity for local authorities to outline their strategy, might it not be good and sensible for the government to ensure that there is a timeline for when every local authority should have this strategy in place?
We can, I think, properly look to the incentives provided by public funding and by public pressure and pressure from car owners to drive this process. But I absolutely would not rule out a more, as it were, engaged attitude towards local authorities. And indeed, I have myself met with plenty of local authorities in my time, relatively short time I've been in this job, precisely because I regard charge point infrastructure provision as a very serious issue involving not just the charge point operators and the electricity providers, but also the local authorities themselves as the providers of infrastructure. So I take on board his point. And of course, it's worth mentioning the funding that I've described sits alongside funding already being provided through the on-street residential charge point scheme. Now, I've talked a little bit about rapid charging. I don't need to spend too much time on that. It doesn't directly affect the situation so much, but of course, the Chamber will be aware that we have a situation at the moment where a driver is never more than 25 miles away from a rapid charge point. We do need to increase and accelerate the level of charge points that we put in, and we have a commitment to do so to around 6,000 ultra-rapid devices by 2035. Yes, of course.
Stephen.
My right honourable friend's being incredibly generous. I realise I made a hugely glaring omission in my remarks a moment ago, because although he quite rightly says that rapid charging points perhaps are the next follow-on, the reality, of course, is that rapid charging points are hugely important for commercial vehicle transition to electric vehicles, and indeed, dare I say, taxi cabs and others, and therefore I did have some remarks to make on that, but somehow missed them out. But I think it's very important to recognise, we spoke a lot about domestic vehicles, but we need to recognise the transition in commercial activity as well.
He's absolutely right to of course, make that adjustment, and I assumed that, given the confines of Westminster Hall debate, he was compressing an otherwise comprehensive speech into a narrower compass, and rightly so. Let me just pick up a couple of quick things, and then I'll sit down, given the time available, Mr. Pritchard. In order to strengthen consumer confidence, the government's going to lay legislation in the coming months to reduce charging anxiety still further. That includes legislation to mandate open data, going to the point raised by my friend the member for Havant, a 99% reliability across each rapid charging network, a 24/7-hour helpline for when something may go wrong, contactless and payment roaming, and a pricing network in order to improve and increase transparency. Again, I think this will improve competition, rivalry, and therefore investment. I think it's worth just pointing out that we have also made significant further investment. The member for Strangford asked about changing planning permissions for developments. The member of Strangford is not in his place, but I should just say that last year the government implemented legislation to require new build domestic and non-domestic vehicles and those undergoing renovations to install charge points during construction. And therefore, the part of the solution to this problem is not just, as it were, further public investment alongside the very rapidly escalating private investment. It's also about better regulation. Let me just pick up a couple of quick points made by colleagues in the Chamber in the course of the debate. My friend the member for Wimbledon raised the question about his ask about the budget VAT on remote charging. He will know, and I will remind him as a former Financial Secretary of the Treasury, that I will be skinned if I attempt to commit the government on this issue, least of all about a tax policy, least of all a few days before a fiscal event. But I'm sure it's in the public record, and it'll be well noted in 100 Horse Guards. And, of course, he talks about pressure on local authorities as regards long-term plans. I think that's absolutely right. Good local authorities are thinking about longer-term plans. Not all of the infrastructure originally installed was as long-term in its inspiration. It was an early technology. It's been superseded since. I think they're getting better. We do have plans to assist local government in thinking about gullies, which are a very useful long-term way of providing for on-street charging. I think that will make a big difference. My friend the member for Central Suffolk asked about home charging in rural areas. He's absolutely right. Of course, rural areas do suffer particular drawbacks, but they have the advantage that there tends to be more available parking space for people who do buy electric vehicles. As you get more longevity improvements in technology, we would expect that, but it does then require them to be able to charge. That is now increasingly provided as part of the commercial package of buying a vehicle, and as we see technology and competition take over, we can expect the price of vehicles to fall over time. So I believe that problem will start to address itself over and above the considerable investments we're already making. And with that, thank you very much indeed, Mr. Pritchard.
The question is that this House has considered electric